To put together the software, maintain it, add all the features, create the tutorial, documentation is the difficult part.
I was wondering of the origin of your entrepreneurship. Is it from your family or friends?
I think it has to do with the geography. I am from this city north of Milan called Monza, which is in the middle of this region where many people are entrepreneurs. So in that particular part of Italy, it is very, very, very common for people to be small entrepreneurs, have companies, be self-employed. And it's a place where actually a lot of, it's big in the furniture making. And so a lot of Italian design items are made there, or are from companies who are based there. So in a way, I think it was, from a point of view for me, it was obvious that, you could be an entrepreneur because of that kind of background, I think.
Okay. And how did you make the link, even if you were in this community? Did you have friends around you who could advise you, or you?
Well, when we started doing Arduino, I already had a number of experiences. I started companies before. Not all of them went well.
How did you start at the beginning, the first company?
Oh, I guess when I was 20-something, with a few friends of mine, we started a company doing web development, which was one of the very first companies in Italy doing web development. Then I got hired by a big internet company in Italy to kind of manage the web development thing. So I sort of moved into corporation. But for me, there was nothing. The entrepreneurship was an option that I was happy to explore.
Okay. And how did you manage at the beginning for your first company the financial part?
Yeah, well, I think nowadays my experience is very different from what I was years ago. I think years ago all these aspects were very sort of, I don't know. So my father had a shop, so I was working in the shop. So a lot of the basics of you do accounting, I learned running the shop. So invoicing and balance budgets and all that, I learned there. But then I think I probably I became more formal in the approach later on with experience. I guess it goes through the fact that you get screwed a few times. You make mistakes and you get hurt, so you become more and more and more and more formal. And I think, yeah.
And did you need some investors to start, or did you start by yourself?
Well, it depends. When we did Arduino, we made an investment. Some of the founders of Arduino put a few €1,000 to start making the first batch of Arduinos. And then with the profits from all those Arduinos, essentially the manufacturing financed itself. Obviously, none of us was working full-time for Arduino, so we had other jobs. I was teaching in Ivrea, then I was teaching in another school, and then I was doing consultancy, I was doing exhibition design projects. So I was doing all these projects, and so Arduino was like a side thing. Because also you have to imagine that in 2005, it was something for a very, very small community, nobody cared.
Okay. Can you tell us how Arduino came up with your team? How did you meet each other? And
Well, in 2002 I started teaching in a design school in Ivrea, in the northwest of Italy, and my job was to teach this class which is called physical computing, where you teach students how to use electronics to prototype objects, devices, to imagine kind of the objects of the future. And so we used products that were not, they had lots of problems. They were complicated to use, they were mostly for engineers, they were running on Windows, and so it was kind of complicated. And so what happened there is I started to make some experiments, and I made one product called Programma 2003, which was my first prototype, my first kind of the grandfather of Arduino, which was the same elements of Arduino. So there was a development environment, there was kind of a simple language, tutorials, and a board you could make yourself. But then we used it at school. The students used it, they liked it, but it wasn't the right product because it lacked like a community propelling it. So when I started to rethink this, I started to gather some people that had some similar.
How did you manage this community? How did you?
Well, at the beginning, for example, we invited another teacher of physical computing from Sweden, who is Spanish but lives in Sweden, David Quartiers, to come and do some work on a project. So me and David started to figure out that we had some common interest in making something for us for students, and I started to work on Arduino already. So I showed him some of the work, and then we started to make the first boards for ourselves. Then we involved two students. One of them is considered still in the founding team, David Mellis and Nicolas Zambetti. And we started to hack the software. And then after that stage, I started to involve other people. So, for example, I had met Tom Igo, who was a professor at NYU, who was the most famous teacher of physical computing in the world. Also, he was the first one to really put all the teaching materials online, shared publicly. So I got in touch with him, and then I invited him as well to come and do a research project in Ivrea. And during that time, we showed him Arduino. And then the last piece, I met an engineer in Ivrea who knew a number of factories. So we asked him to help us manufacture the Arduino boards.
How many boards did you sell since the beginning?
It's probably around 1.5 million. More or less. But it's very difficult to estimate properly because there's the number of users of Arduino are much more, because there are all the Chinese copies, which are probably 3 or 4 million at least, and there's also a lot of compatibles, homemade, people who use Arduino to make their products and say, download the Arduino software and just program the thing, which kind of shows you that the hardware is simple. The hardware in Arduino is simple. Anybody can make their own Arduino. But to put together the software, maintain it, add all the features, create the tutorial, documentation is the difficult part. Nobody wants to do that. In fact, everybody just uses Arduino. They say, go to Arduino, download it, and then come here and use our thing. So in a way, it's interesting, this kind of situation where a lot of people are able to reproduce the hardware, but they're not able to improve on the user experience, so they should just take Arduino. So that's, because the Arduino websites has something like 5 million people that go to it like every 3 months. Like in 2014, 18 million people visited the Arduino website at least once. Which means, obviously, some people just look at it and say, okay, this is not for me, I don't care. But the average time they spend on the website is 6 minutes. So it means that there are millions of people who come to read documentation, learn, and all of that. So there is really this situation where the software, the documentation, everything is a real big resource.
And what's your business model at the beginning? Because, how did you know that you could you could sell a product and at the same time give everything to rebuild it? How did you know it would work?
I don't know, the model was kind of similar to a fashion model. In fashion, you basically you brand something with a trademark, and then you have somebody else make it, and they sell it, and you make some money, on the product. But effectively, in many countries, fashion cannot be protected. There's no trademark or copyright for this shirt. Anybody can make it. So what you do, you start branding it heavily. Like, the Louis Vuitton bag is the example. You put the logo everywhere. So if you want to copy the bag, you're copying the logo. So we try to imagine, why don't we evolve toward a model where there is a strong branding, And when people see this strong branding, they understand this is an Arduino, and they buy this, they're helping, supporting the Arduino project. And if they buy something else, it's they can buy a clone. Also because, again, in taking some input from the fashion world, there are some people that they want a shirt that says Armani, but they obviously don't want to pay the money to Armani because they want to pay as little as possible. So they would basically go and buy either a fake Armani or something that almost looks like an Armani thing, because they want somehow the brand kind of thing, but they don't want to spend the money. And those people, they will never spend more money for the original Armani. And in a way, so we knew that there was a section of the world that they would always go for the cheapest product. And at the moment,
Do you know what makes the difference between people who will buy your product and people who will buy the Chinese version?
Well, obviously the difference is that if you buy one of those, you pay very little, but it's essentially it's throwaway electronics. You buy from eBay, you plug them in, and maybe 10 boards, 7 work, 2 and 1 is broken, and there's no way you can give it back. So when you buy this stuff from eBay, a lot of time it's broken, doesn't work. So in a way, it's kind of like, okay, I'm gonna pay less money for this, and some of this will work, some of this will not work. Who cares? So obviously, right now, it is becoming a little bit of a problem because there's way too much, and obviously there's a lot of counterfeiting, so a lot of fake Arduinos. So some people are thinking they are buying an original Arduino, but they're actually buying a fake one. So, we have been debating if there is a way that we can add a little bit more protection to the product, but we are not sure what's the best way to do it that's not gonna, create problems with the community. Because, already we could make the software that only recognizes Arduino boards that are original, but, I don't know. I'm trying to shift to a place where we innovate so fast that obviously you can buy the Arduino Uno from China and spend less money, but the new products, the Chinese won't be able to make as fast as we do. So that's
how do you innovate in this way to be always faster than people who will copy your...
Well, we're also trying to change the way the company works. At the moment, the manufacturing is done mostly in Italy. That's not the best way to do everything. As in certain markets, you cannot sell original Arduinos in China. They're too expensive. So you have to make Arduinos in China for the Chinese market. So, or India, for example, Arduino in India is huge, but the sales are very small, because it's too expensive for India. So, the question is how to create products that change and improve constantly. And there are some interesting models. There's a Chinese mobile phone company that not only has software updates, but almost every month they generate a new version of the hardware with improvements. So you can constantly update your products and make them more interesting. Obviously, in certain markets it works up to a certain point. Like the education market likes things that are predictable, always the same, long term. Other markets want the latest thing today. So it changes a lot.
What made you so interested in the open source spirit or open hardware today?
Well, I have been using open source software for a long time. I was early Linux user when I was, 20. We started playing around with Linux because we were not satisfied with Windows. We wanted something, a little bit more powerful in a way, some a little bit more, I don't know. Also the open source approach appealed as a way to to have this kind of massive innovation. And then obviously in the years when I worked doing software, more and more software became available through the internet as open source code that you could use in your products. So nowadays, if you look at it, a lot of big software projects start from people going to GitHub and say, I'm going to take this and this and this and this and this, package it up, boom, and then add your software on it, and then you make a product. So in a way, this idea that with open source you can do this kind of big shared innovation, I think it's very, very important. So it was clear for me that also at the beginning we knew that not a lot of people would be able to buy products, because at the beginning there was no manufacturing. The only thing we had was blank PCBs that you could buy. Don't even buy, you would just give it to you and you would solder, or you would make the boards from the instructions from the internet. Somebody ran a workshop in Chile in 2006 and they made 25 boards completely by hand from the instruction they got from the website, which was, it's a lot of effort. So that's why we started to be in touch with manufacturers to make products. But the open hardware was a way to say, this is not perfect, but it's out there. If you want to use it, go for it.
Okay. And some people think that there is a big problem, a big issue with open source. This is the fact that since this is free, the code is free and available, that makes the first algorithm, for example, a standard that is always used and never rebuilt, or to build an algorithm more efficient?
It depends, because if you look at the open source projects right now, especially in web development, it's ridiculous the amount of rewriting that happens. Even when there are perfectly good libraries that people use for everything, people write like 7 versions of the same thing. Like you look at web development and you look at the basic libraries you need to build a web application, every computer language has at least 20 of them, which are slightly different. So in a way, people are happy to rewrite from scratch. Obviously, if there's a piece of code which is useful and well written and does its job, people use it.
How many employees do you have now?
It's about 50, but not all of them are full-time. So some of them are like full-time, some of them are like half-time, some of them are just working 1 day a week or something. In Korea, in Taiwan.
I've recently read that you are getting in the Internet of Things.
Oh yeah.
What influence do you think you will have in this area?
Well, we already had influence, considering that the first connected product that Arduino made was 2007. So we made the first Ethernet module for Arduino in 2007, and it was used by a lot of people. And we made, Zigbee, Wi-Fi, all sorts of other connected modules. What happens now is that the IoT is moving from the experimental phase, where we enabled with Arduino in the first phase, to a more industrial, more product, consumer-oriented area. So we need to shift from making products that people use to experiment, to try things out, to things you can drop and put into a product. So really,
are there many companies like this who take your Arduino board and put it in a product and sell the product?
Well, they don't take very few take the actual Arduino board. They mostly take the design of the circuit and add their own things and make it into a product. That's lots of them. If you go to Kickstarter, I think Kickstarter did a study last year, and they say they had more than 100 projects that were related to Arduino in some way, and they collected $7 million, more or less.
If I'm a company, I design a product with the Arduino, and I need your help to integrate the Arduino. Can I call your company?
So this happens mostly when, for example, a company is using a processor which is not supported by Arduino, so they might pay us to add support for that and do the documentation on that. So, for example, we did that with Intel. We now support 2 different Intel architectures, and we work with other companies to help them in a way make custom versions of Arduino for their products.
Have you met Richard Stallman, Linus Torvald, and Eric Raymond?
No, never in real life. There's a slightly different crowd. I hang out with like the makers. They're more in like the classic open source world. Also, I don't know. I think Richard Stallman is a little bit of a fundamentalist of open source, which is kind of, I'm more pragmatic about it. I think it's good and I'm doing it, but not always. Open source is not always the answer to every problem. So I'm a little bit more pragmatic and more kind of, and he's very.
How did you manage the rescaling of your company when you became successful and bigger?
Well, in a way, the most of the scaling happened on the manufacturing side. So in a way, we kind of factored that out to a company. Grew because of the manufacturing. We grew a little bit. There was a phase where everything was a little bit more experimental, so there was not a lot of people needed to do that. And then at some point where the volume became really big and the number of people coming to the website became really a lot, then we started to scale and add people and open offices where we had people that we wanted to work with and give them a home. So it was more based on the fact that the founders are distributed in different countries, so there's like almost an office around each founder in a way, almost. And also, we exploited opportunities that were presented to us.
And did you get an MBA or something like that? No.
I don't even have a degree.
Okay.
I was studying electrical engineering, but I never finished.
Did someone help you, advise you to know what to do?
No, I think I read a lot. Well, obviously, when you want to, you can have a generic idea about what you want to do if you are if you read a lot and you're very informed about how the world works, you can make some decision about, in a way, scaling or something. Then you have to go and talk to professionals. So you need to, accountants and lawyers and people like that. They will help you then implement that. But I guess, I learned a lot by looking at other companies, looking at the history of other companies.
Thank you very much.
It's okay.